Update. By the way, this I think is our first or second meeting without Ivana, who was normally the person in charge of organizing this meeting and kind of making the agenda and making sure everyone was here and was heard. That's been taken over by Herschel at UC Davis. So and we also made him switch over to Teams and do a bunch of other new things. So if anything feels a bit off this meeting, it's purely this is our first time doing this sort of thing. Anyway, I think I'll start if Jack will gets in eventually. About the first 5-10 minutes, I don't think he'll have much to input. So hi everyone, again, thank you for joining us for this. Oh, he's good, he can hear us, great. Thank you for joining us for this dev meeting. I don't think we had one last month, if I remember, because of the holidays. So yeah, we're all going to catch up. We have a few questions that from some people in the community that we'll go over later. I just wanted to start by saying, announcing that we're going to have a minor release of gem5, hopefully by the end of next week. And the reason for that is one of our big items we wanted to get into the last version 24.1 of gem5 was a refactoring of the gem5 exit events, and that didn't quite get in. So we're going to kind of package it up and put it in this minor release of gem5, so that'll be 24.1.1. And I'll go over that briefly just through some examples. It's what we've been working on here. And the big thing, exit events are when you exit the simulation loop to do things like switch cores, for example, or dump stats. But where it really comes into its own is when we update the gem5 resources, disk images to work with these exit events, so we can have exit events that are triggered inside disk images, say at certain key events inside benchmarks, and then gem5 will handle these exit events depending on what they are. So basically the problem we've had for, since exit events were kind of first put into the standard library. Yeah, thank Jason, just linked the staging branch in the chat there. Is that the exit events, as I implemented them about 3 years ago, probably even more than that, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they weren't very friendly in helping people extend and add their own exit event types, which has resulted in everyone using these default ones that never really worked. We had exit and work begin and work end, and I don't think anyone ever used anything else. We wanted to provide a way for people to have a much bigger variety of exit events, as many as you wanted. So I'll go over this in a bit, but what we have here at Davis is an exit event for when the kernel stops booting, an exit event for when you've logged in, an exit event from when you've started running your run script inside your disk image, and an exit event for when that script ends. And you could go into as much detail as you want. I'll go over this a bit in a demonstration. But you, as the user, gem5, can just make your own exit event, handle it in any way you want, and sprinkle it throughout your benchmarks, whatever you're creating, and makes it a lot easier. I guess I can quickly go over that. I did prepare a little demonstration. Screen share again, hopefully that works. Let's see. I think get this out of the way. Wait, I can't get Teams out of the way to go share. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, that's. Okay, so essentially, I have this little demo here. We may change this API slightly over the next week. We're still having some internal discussions about how certain things work, but the general gist is, first of all, in the gem5 bridge or the M5 util, you can fire off these things called hypercalls. I'm not looking at the right. Yeah, so we've got this new command you can run from the gem5 bridge that is, inside your C program or inside a bash script running in a disk images. And the hypercall just allows you to pass an arbitrary or any 2 to the power 64 bit integer to the gem5 simulator, and then that is mapped onto an exit event type. So if you want to create a new exit event, you just have to pick a new number out of 2 to the power of 64 bits and call it. I was trying to find the exact place which Herschel implemented this, but I'm kind of out. Is it here? If it's not here, I'm going to give up. No. So anyway, we can now continually. So all you need to do as you creating your own benchmarks or workloads is to just import the M5 util, the gem5 bridge, whatever you call it, and then just call hypercall and then an integer, and then essentially you handle it kind of like this. I'll skip to the end. The beginning, you basically update your exit event handler. You take that integer, in this case 6, and then you pass your exit event handler to it. I won't go over through the complete API because you're all engineers, you can look into this yourself. But this example I did here. In this example, what I'm doing is I'm taking a checkpoint every 10 billion ticks, and then scheduling. So every time I take a checkpoint, I schedule and exit 10 billion ticks in the future, and then I take a checkpoint then and just iteratively goes until the simulation ends. So it's a solution if you want a checkpoint every 10 billion ticks, for example. So this function here, schedule tick exit absolute, it triggers an exit event via a hypercall with ID 6. Again, that's just an arbitrary chosen one. We're just filling them up as we go along. We've got 6 right now, probably 1 or 2 more by the time the minor release actually comes out. Here we process it. So this is what happens when the exit event is triggered. Here I'm just doing some prints and some checkpoints, and then I schedule 10 billion ticks in the future, ensures the next one. Here we're saying, do we exit the simulation or not? I.e., do we return to the config script essentially? We're saying no, we don't, just jump straight back into the simulation loop again. And we set it here. So if I can run this, please, I did try this before, so hopefully it works. Oh, yes, great. So you can see here, you can take a checkpoint here, and it's continually going through every, and it's going to do that, I think, up to 8, yeah. And it reaches the end. This is a small program here doing a matrix multiplication. So that's essentially a very high level. I probably didn't go over anything enough detail for everyone to maybe fully understand the implications of this. But it just allows a lot more flexibility. It's going to allow us to make much richer disk images. So what you're going to see next week in the minor release is a plethora of disk images that have a lot more exit events in them. By default, these will do nothing. Like kernel has booted, doesn't do anything by default, but you can set it like I've set this here to do something. One thing I'm trying to find solutions for in this design is a way for people to look up these arbitrary assigned IDs we already have to what we have created in the disk images. That's probably just going to be a documentation issue. So I believe kernel boot complete is ID 1. So I do 1 here and then do this. Anyway, I'm going a little bit too on this. The one thing that's just going to really feed into over the next few months is this idea of, I'm just going to stop this because I want to briefly share another window. Is this idea of the gem5 orchestration framework. So essentially, with this minor release, we'll also have a little teaser of functionality to through an external process, send a signal to gem5 and then trigger any hypercall you want, and therefore trigger an exit event in any form you want. So Jason kind of made this example here. What he's got here is in the left-hand side, running gem5 execution. On the right-hand side, he's got this orchestration request where you can get the status of the gem5 running. So what this does here is the hypercall is we have a function set up when this particular hypercall is called, we dump basically diagnostic information, or well, status information rather, and that's essentially how this works. So we're trying to make more tools to interact with gem5 processes while they're running, and this is what was one of the things that hypercalls and the betterment of exit events really help with. So anyway, key points to get across. There's a minor release. There's going to be a change. No, the old exit events are still going to be there, and it's all going to be backwards compatible. But there's going to be a new kind of form of exit events. You can add them more. There's going to be a lot more richer information communicated, and there's going to be new disk images that support them. And it's going to be kind of the beginning of tooling that allows us to inspect running gem5 processes, which is something we've been wanting to do for some time. That's really all I want to say on that.
Bobby, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry.
There's people with their hands up.
Yes, I just noticed that. You had your hand up, Jason. Was that just to tell me that people had their hand up?
No, I wanted to talk.
Okay.
So one thing I want to maybe push back a little bit on is the dictionary implementation that you have, where some user has to magically remember these numbers, and I think there's a much better way to do that.
We can. That's why I kind of said API may change. That's the part I don't really love, but I also don't really love the solution to that either. So I'm sure we can find something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm highly confident we can improve that, and I think we should do that before we do the minor release.
Yes, we've got. Yeah.
We should make sure we have a good API and the API is fixed before we do a release.
Well, yes. I guess the minor release deadline is it's kind of an internal thing. I just think we can probably, like that, actually the whole ID thing is a very small part of this, and we should decide what the solution is rather than it being necessarily hard to implement. And we're already well ahead in creating the disk images that work with this all anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, and the other thing that you didn't mention that's important to say is that this is fully backwards compatible with the old exit events. There's one hypercall, which is hypercall 0, which implements all the old exit events.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend using them both at the same time just because it's a little bit confusing, but you can use one or the other, and all your old scripts will work.
I've actually tested both at the same time, and it works. Well, after you apply all my patches. Okay, Giacomo, you have your hand up?
Yep. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, thanks, Bobby, for the change. I have like a slightly unrelated comment, which is like, I don't want to sound a bit polemic, but basically, what is the governance model of gem5 as of now? In the sense that you're basically telling us that we are having a minor release in 1 week, but I think none of the maintainers have been informed about that, or asked, for example, some comments, or whether they have actually some patches or some contributions they will like to also add to the release. Like, this is fine, it's not a big deal. I don't want to make too much of a problem out of it, but I believe that there is like a bit of communication problem between us. So the fact that maintainers are made aware that there is like a minor release in a week time seems a bit dysfunctional. But that's my candid feedback. But yeah, I don't want to take it.
I don't apologize. I completely agree. Actually, I think I would like to have a wider discussion about governance generally in gem5. It's sometimes very hard to know who does and does not need to be in the loop for things and making the decisions. This honestly was this minor release is largely driven by requirements to have this as a there's a research project at Davis that kind of need this, and it's very independent. It doesn't interfere with other parts of the project. So I guess I did take an executive decision rather than consulting. But yes, we do technically have a release procedure for this, and I believe it says I'm supposed to. I mean, I wrote this, so I'm saying my own words here. I'm supposed to give like 2 weeks notice before this, so I guess I am at least 1 week out. I guess all I'll say is I completely understand that I wouldn't be super comfortable with a project I'm working like this. I just would like to have a discussion on what people would like, because I find not everyone actually does want to know all the details about every single release and every single hotfix or whatever else. I guess that's really all I have to say about that. But yes, I do take this on board. This is abrupt. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good if you actually had a talk at a certain point. I think this comes from several reasons. I think also the migration from the mailing list into GitHub created like a bit of a difference. I believe in a way the mailing list was a bit more democratic because people were basically tended to actually ask things in advance, like, hey guys, what do you think about doing this and that?
Yeah.
But I mean, to be fair, like, I understand that maintaining the mailing list was too much of a problem, and GitHub is better. We've seen many more contributions. So I'm not saying that we are for the worst. Actually, we are better now in terms of code review, if you want my opinion. But I think there is. I think, sorry, just to finish, I'm just finishing this one. I just like, if I compare how we were like 3 years ago, we had like different problems, but I believe there was more communication between maintainers, and I don't know what has changed, but this is what I realized, and I think we need to address that somehow.
Jason?
So, thanks. Yeah, this is a good thing to bring up, Giacomo, and we need to have a broader conversation about this. I've also been thinking that our governance model is not necessarily, well, I mean, two things. One, we don't really follow our governance model very well. And what we're, the current way that we're running the project does not match the governance model. And we haven't really made a conscious decision as to how we want to run the project. I think one thing that bothers me, especially when you talk about how things felt more democratic in the past, is that our governance model is based on a meritocratic system, which, like Bobby wrote the release notes, I wrote the governance model, so it's my fault. But the problem is that with this meritocratic model, it's kind of like whoever does the work gets to make the decisions. I'm not sure that's what we want, because right now the case is that most of the development that's done, at least for the community, is done at Davis, which according to our governance model means Davis gets to make the decisions. And I'm not sure that's the way everybody wants it to be. So I think we need to kind of.
Well, what do you mean by most of the development is done by Davis? I think there are several people who contribute to several aspects of gem5. If you're talking about like CI and all that kind of stuff, I agree. Like most of it is done by Davis. But
well, I don't mean to get into an argument here. I more mean that like the only person who is willing to figure out how to do releases for gem5 is Bobby. And so since he is the person who is doing the work, he is the person who has control over it. And I mean, maybe that's a problem. And we need to come up with a different governance model than meritocratic system, which I'm super open to. But that's kind of the way it's defined right now, is whoever is willing to do the work to do a release gets to make the rules. And there are trade-offs there.
This is explicitly stated in the governance model.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
I mean, I will have to read it then. It seemed to me pretty unfair. I'm not saying that, like, it also depends on how it actually relates to the examples, right? Like, just because I basically push a contribution doesn't mean that I can merge it as it is or do whatever I want, right? There is a specific code of conduct when it comes to behavior with the community.
I mean, the problem is that I want to have a longer conversation about this, and maybe we should table it until next month so that we can announce we're going to have the conversation. People can form, more careful thoughts around things. I need to form more careful thoughts around it. But I think my opinion is that when we're looking at community-focused projects, not many people are able or willing to do the extra community work. And so therefore, the few people who are willing to do that community work end up with a lot more, unchecked power. So if we think that's a problem, then we need to completely revisit our governance model and try to fix that problem.
But I'm not proposing any major changes. It's just to make sure that other maintainers are actually kept in the loop. It's really nothing that is extremely different from what it is now, just to have a bit more of a discussion when it comes to releases and some other stuff. Honestly, I don't think we need to explicitly create some processes to make sure this is actually guaranteed or change our governance model. I think for me, it's common sense or intuitively in a way on how, to me, a democratic project. I'm not even saying before we actually form a decision, there is to be a consensus of everybody. I'm not saying that, and I didn't say this about the incoming release. It's just that maybe adding an heads up a month ago and saying, hey, we are doing, for example, I never questioned anything about major releases. I never said no, we shouldn't have a major release because you are making the release, so you decide when to do it. But just it's nice as a maintainer to be kept in the loop, and you tell us, okay, we aim to have a release in 3 months. Do you have any contribution that you want to get in? And you actually already do this work for major release. It's just that it will be nice to have it in minor releases as well, or in other kind of project-related.
I actually really completely agree with everything you're saying, but can we note this down to definitely discuss next time, because I really would like to allocate a serious amount of time to talk about these things, but just we're halfway through this meeting right now, and I know there's 3 or 4 other things we need to discuss that Giacomo, we want you to have input in as well. So are you okay, just saving your thoughts for 30 days from now? Yeah, but I do actually agree with almost everything you said. Okay. Does anyone have any last minute comments about the exit event stuff? We can take it offline if you want. I didn't see anyone else with their hand up. Let's do the hand up thing. That was quite handy for me to see if anyone was there. Okay. I'm going to hand over to Herschel, who's I think going to run through the rest of the agenda, at least order people who's talking, and yeah, I'll take a step back. Herschel, can you just unmute and introduce yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so for the next things, we have a few smaller things. I guess first one would be like there is a PR. I'll send a link in chat as well. So this seemed like a bigger change to like page allocated for SE mode, and like there was a discussion in the PR itself to bring it up for the next meeting. So I just added it to the agenda in case we wanted to have more discussion about it. The main point of conversation was the change about allocating bytes, like uh, like mainly that change that was made in this PR. If you want to see, it is the last comment thread in mempool.cc change.
I believe it was Jacko had the comment. I think this needs a bit of attention. So sorry to you, Jacko. Do you have like what do you think needs attention here, and what can we as a group kind of decide upon?
Honestly, like I commented that some time ago. I don't remember like the exact details, but basically it was like the way the allocated bytes was computed, that there could be a potential conflict when you actually call like reset stats, and the stat can be a bit misleading because like what does the stat? Okay, now that I'm explaining, I remember a bit better. So because that refers to the number of allocated memory, so it's not clear whether the stat represents the number of allocated memory as a whole at a specific moment, or only for a specific region of interest. Because if it's just for the specific region of interest, then that's fine, because M5 sub reset will basically just give you the ones you actually allocated in that specific window. But if it set refers to the maximum number of allocated bytes throughout the entire simulation, then it could be a bit misleading with that. So I believe that was my comment, but I didn't got a reply from that.
Yeah, so I think I was the one that said we should bring this up. I think what I wanted to discuss briefly was, do we think that when someone calls reset stats, that we should reset all stats? Or do we think that there should be stats that are not reset? Is there ever a case where we want to not reset a stat?
I don't know specifically.
I mean, personally, I think that like if we want things that are not reset when we call reset stats, we shouldn't call them stats, or we should put them in a special global or like forever stat group or something.
So in your universe, Jason, research stats is equivalent to literally starting the simulation at that point in time.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And in the past, we've had a lot of confusion about this because some things like the global instruction count were not reset, which like I know from seeing results that my students presented can cause big confusions in terms of the research results. So I would advocate for having one behavior, which I think is what you were advocating for in that comment, Giacomo.
Yeah, definitely. Just wanted to make sure that the person actually understood what would be the behavior in case of a reset or not.
Okay.
Also, sorry, another thing. The reason also I was confused, it's because the PR philosophically hinted that one of the so what the stat was supposed to mean was like the maximum allocation, because the PR aims at basically reducing the footprint, the memory footprint, right? So that's why I thought that actually the person actually believes that this would be like a global one, whereas it wouldn't be a global. But maybe I'm just like speculating over that.
Right.
It shouldn't be like a big blocker anyway. I think it is like a very nice contribution, and I think we should try to manage it.
Cool. I think we're in agreement. Great. So that sounds really good.
Okay. Great. I love consensus. Herschel, what's the next? I know you had 2 or 3 things that were brought up, at least in various channels, to discuss.
Yeah. The next thing is about running like a ARM simulation with KVM in a model that has more than 8 cores. There was a discussion post made. I can link the discussion in chat again. But it seemed like there was a little bit of confusion, or so I wanted to see if we had something to talk about and make it more clear, or have a better method, would be my guess.
So, Giacomo, have you had a chance to take a look at this? The question is it possible to use gem5's KVM on ARM with more than 8 cores?
Theoretically speaking, yes, as long as you're basically using a GigV3 machine. That's like a requirement, because in GigV2 you have the limitation of 8 cores, and to basically avoid that, we have that specific fork of Gig driver to allow more than 8. But if you're basically running a vanilla Linux kernel, and you want more than 8 cores, you should use like the foundation platform or the V2. I would recommend the foundation platform, which employs GigV3.
Is that you? So, sorry, I was having trouble hearing you. So the requirement is to use GIC v3 in the guest?
Yes. I mean, yes.
And I assume that the vExpress gem5 Foundation, which is using vExpress v2, which has a GIC v3 controller, would cover that?
So yes, it should cover that. So the fact that you're unable to boot, it means there is something wrong, and I should take a look at that. But there is no way for me to tell just by from what you described. I will need to debug it myself, like get my hands on a machine and debug and see what's going wrong.
Can you give any hints as to how to debug it?
Some hints. That's a good question. First of all, make sure that you have like early print K as a kernel option. That's usually very useful. So when you pass the kernel parameter, so that basically the print K starts printing since the beginning. So sometimes if you don't pass that up, like you don't see anything on the terminal, but maybe just because you're basically stuck in a loop somewhere. So that's like one thing to do. And the other hand, trying to see whether there is any warning from the KVM APIs, whether there's like the KVM APIs return some error and you're not catching some warning.
Okay. Do you have any intuition for if it's a problem, if we should concentrate on looking like on what the DTB is going from like that the guest is loading versus looking at the KVM API versus just some device not being connected correctly?
I mean, the DTB could be a problem, and potentially also the kernel version. I will need to have more information. So, are you using how is the DTB passed? Are you using auto generation of the DTB?
I believe so. Yeah, we're not overriding the DTB. Okay. I'll try to provide more information, but Like the easiest thing to do is I'll upload a script that we did that will have everything. Okay, but yeah, like this would be it'd be super helpful to get some help here. This is KVM CPU is a really nice feature, and it would be really great to get this working.
So I had a quick question on that. Is it possible to do this within a virtual machine on Mac? Like, can we run gem5 in KVM mode and take checkpoints within the VM on a Mac?
No, it's not possible.
Okay.
Because KVM is part of Linux, and Mac OS is a different virtualization framework, which is HDF. So it's not possible.
So within a virtual machine, so if I run a Linux VM on
sorry,
ARM,
yeah, okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Maybe, yes, I don't know.
okay.
It seems like a bit of a net thing.
I think
You would.
I don't think it works. Yeah.
What I would do to test that would be see if you can run QEMU in KVM mode inside your virtual machine.
Okay.
And if that works, then it's possible that gem5 would work. If that doesn't work, then there's no chance gem5 would work.
Okay, yeah. And this is, I think, nested virtualization, so I'm not sure how well.
Nested virtualization works on Linux now. So I know for sure the Azure VMs, if you're running in the cloud, support nested virtualization, and you can use gem5 KVM on Azure inside their virtual machine, but that's all Linux from top to bottom. So,
okay.
And it's x86 too. I don't even know if the ARM ISA supports nested virtualization.
Okay, thanks.
We don't have it in Gen 5. I mean, ARM supports nested virtualization, but it's not implemented in Gen 5.
Does your middle guest have to know about it, or does only the hypervisor have to know? Okay, that's okay. Okay, thanks, Giacomo. I appreciate the insights, and we will follow up.
Marshall?
Yeah. The last thing is generally like a discussion on like the AI generated code policy, and basically, I guess one of the questions was like, should commits using AI generated code allowed at all, or should they have a tag that specifies saying that this commit was written using AI and stuff like that? So yeah.
So we are not lawyers, and we don't have any lawyers for the project, so I'm not sure we can come up with the correct answer here. But I'll say that the way that we have done things in the past with gem5 is that it is up to the committer to ensure that they have copyright in order to push that code, and they own copyright on that code. If you're committing for a company, then the company often owns copyright, and so you'd have to go through that company's lawyers to find out if what you're doing is above board or not. I don't think that there's anything as maintainers that we can do to enforce anything one way or the other, unless we make some changes to the governance model and do things like a contributor license agreement, which we've talked about in the past, and for a variety of reasons have decided not to do in the community. So just like normal code, if you were to upload a PR to gem5 that had code that was an incompatible license with gem5, that would be on the contributor to not do. So if you're using generative AI, be careful not to upload any code that you don't know the copyright for. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments on that?
I'll just say, I think part of the question is also like almost, are they allowed to? And should it be polite to at least say something's auto-generated? I think everyone I've talked to thinks it should be allowed, and I guess it's a massive part of your code is actually generated. It might be nice to say it is, just so we can review it as such. But I certainly use Copilot for one or two functions here and there. So it is allowed, as far as I'm not the like I don't decide these things, but I think it's fine.
If anyone hasn't used these tools, they're pretty amazing. I've actually gotten them to the point of like, I can ask them, build a standard library board that has this cache hierarchy with these sizes and this kind of processor, and it just writes all the code, especially in Python for the standard library configurations. You tell it what you want it to do, it will write all the code for you. It's pretty incredible. Any other thoughts about that? Jonathan, was it you that brought that up? I've lost my link. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, like I think that it's. I just basically thought it was worth considering, and that maybe out of politeness or whatever, it might be worth possibly mentioning in commits that they feature some amount of AI generated code, because possibly, I sometimes I find that using sort of auto-generated code can introduce sort of very kind of difficult to spot bugs, and so it's at least useful, I guess, to give maintainers a heads up, possibly.
I certainly agree. It would be polite. I'm just one of these contrarian people that's like, well, where's the line? It's like it's like a tab completion, like AI generated code, or stupid things like this. But I think you like know it when you see it, sort of thing. Like, I think if someone's submitting large classes of complex stuff, I would like to know if they just got ChatGPT to whip it up for them, or whether they did actually write it themselves. I think part of it is also maybe my interpretation of their experience in the project. Do I trust? But yeah, I'd say maybe we should have just a little note somewhere, just for the sake of it, just to say we it's nice to know if some stuff is complex and not your own direct creation, for sure.
What about a related question? So I have all sorts of pro GitHub stuff. I have a button in my GitHub to review code with Copilot. How do people feel about receiving code reviews from LLMs? If someone submitted a patch and I provided a GitHub Copilot review, would you be annoyed or happy or not care?
And I'm sorry, but some of you already have got Copilot reviews, because I've definitely done that once or twice.
Sounds like nobody cares.
I mean, it's on us, like the reviewers, to like sanity check. And
yeah. One thing is that this project, all open source projects, we don't have anywhere near enough engineers to do everything that we want to do. So I think using these tools could enable the relatively small community that's developing gem5 to do a lot more than we could otherwise. So I'm very excited about it.
That is true, provided though that the review you actually do with Copilot is just like a starting point. I think one of the big things about reviewing code and doing code reviews is that you actually get to learn some other code that you have never looked into. And I think as a maintainer, you get exposure to lots of code, and it's like a very good learning process. So to answer your previous question, basically, I don't mind, and I think it can help some time and can help spot some bugs. But then, like, only if it's like a starting point, and then like if you actually go read first of all what Copilot has written, and also do a second round of review yourself, so that you actually learn, and it's not just Copilot learning for you.
Right. I mean, I think writing code is the same way. It's like, yeah, using it to do the rote stuff that anybody could do with an hour is really useful, but using it to develop the design is probably a lot less useful.
I think,
Okay.
you know, when me and Jason were talking about this earlier, when you're writing, if you have AI writing code, the buck stops with you, you know? If the code's crappy, it's your fault for using a tool that didn't provide a good output. And for us, as when we're refereeing patches, the buck stops with us. You know, if we referee something and we use a bad tool that says junk or lets something in or says something's wrong, you know, I think it's on us as well. And I think this is just when the community comes into effect. The community polices ourselves in a way, and there's part of it's based on kind of reputation and things like this. And you know, my kind of nightmare is some kid comes in and he thinks he's really helping us, and he writes a little bot that automatically reviews PRs without any human in the loop whatsoever. And you know, I just think we have to make sure that doesn't happen, and we still manually verify things to an extent, and at least do the thumbs up if there's a minimal step in that process.
Yeah, I agree. Then again, if there's a bot that would go through and tell people to use curly braces around if statements, it would save me a lot of time.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Anybody have anything else today? Okay. Great. So next week or next month, we will have a discussion about the governance model. And Matt and Giacomo, who are both, and Matt and Giacomo are definitely on the PMC. Bobby, are you on the PMC?
I can't even remember anymore.
Okay. Anyway, I might be reaching out to you ahead of time if we're considering doing something drastic. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Wow, how ominous. Anyone have anything else? As always, well, I'll upload this meeting to the YouTube page. I'll see how the meeting notes come out, and if they're suitable, I'll post them on the discussions page as well. Otherwise, thank you for joining, and I'll see you all next month.